Welcome to another episode of Fantasy News. I am your host, Daniel Green, and today we don't have much directly book-related news, but we have some rumors, some Brandon Sanderson, and some adaptations, finished off with superhero quickie news. Without any further ado, let's jump on into it. Yes, I'm wearing a new tie. I got this specifically for Fantasy News, and I realized I'm dressing up more fancily, more frequently, for my YouTube job than I ever did for my software engineering job. I don't know what that says about me, but I'll be thinking about that for a while. Kicking it off, I'd like to give a shout out to a fellow YouTube channel here at the platform who had the privilege of having on one of the greatest fantasy authors currently working. The Command Cube Zone had Brandon Sanderson on to sit down and game with them, and it was just a really fun video to watch. I highly recommend you check it out. Brandon Sanderson has very good presence on camera, not even like just for an author, and let's be honest, not every author has great stage presence on camera. He just comes across very genuine and nice, and it's cool to see these people just kind of relax and get nerdy. Now moving on into a rumor, and I want to make it very clear, this is a rumor from a website I don't know particularly well, but WeGotThisCovered.com reported they have a source who claims Disney is looking to make a live-action Dragon Ball Z adaptation with an all-Asian cast. There's going to be many reactions to this, varying from, Daniel, why are you covering a rumor, to, dear please God, no, to some people, I'm sure, fairly excited and hopeful. I can't speak on this much because it's a rumor, it's vague, but it is Disney. They're making a lot of moves right now, and it's important to note they do own the rights. After purchasing 20th Century Fox, Disney does own the rights to make a live-action Dragon Ball Z movie. This is even noted on the Dragon Ball Z fandom website. So I will leave the speculation up to you, the fans. They own the rights. Do you think Disney thinks it's a good idea to do a live-action adaptation Dragon Ball Z movie? There has been one before that is notoriously terrible that fans tend to hate, on the same level as the live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender adaptation brought to you by M. Night Shyamalan, if not even worse. Taking my completely I am not a hardcore DBZ fan at all approach, Dragon Ball Z is not R-rated, it falls into the Disney PG-13 range. They definitely handle superheroes well, so a lot of that experience with CGI and handling action and studio development could translate over to Dragon Ball Z. But that's my perspective of someone who's not emotionally tied to the franchise. I would love for some Dragon Ball Z fans to sound off in the comments and let me know how they feel. And for very hardcore fantasy fans, N.K. Jemisin, the incredible author of the Broken Earth trilogy, gave a speech about world building and oppression and how she approached these topics. It's linked down below if you'd like to check it out. I highly recommend it. It definitely gave me new ideas in approaching world building altogether that I previously wasn't even thinking about. It was really interesting to see her give her process and thoughts on these ideas. Linked down below, as I said. Of course, if you wouldn't mind hitting like while you're down there, it'd help me immensely here on Fantasy News. And of course, every story I talk about today will be linked down below. And in 3 bits of Fantasy Quickie News, Spike Lee is set to direct the adaptation of the graphic novel Prince of Cats. We got an official trailer drop for Nevernight, a YouTube web series based off the award-winning fantasy series by the same name. I haven't read Nevernight, but it is really cool to see this web series have such high production value. I'd be lying if I said it looked like a pure studio, not web-based thing. No, there's clear shots, camera work, budgetary things that to me reek of not being that full-level studio adaptation, but it still looks good. I'm still really impressed by this and wish them all the best. And in the final bit of fantasy news, I meant Fantasy Quickie News, not Fantasy News. I made a mistake, I'm sorry. The Game of Thrones spin-off series House of Dragons has landed writers from the OA and Colony. But getting into a story I want to go a little bit deeper on, Christopher Paolini, as I covered previously, posted the number 6. Now, today, he posted 4. What are you doing, Chris? What are you counting down towards? Are we all going to die? Christopher, you should tell us if we're going to die. I'm scared. But this is probably a countdown to his new sci-fi series. I'm guessing that based off the fact that he's putting these in space shots, and he announced a while ago that he's working on science fiction, so I'm actually really pumped for that. He made good books when he was younger, and I hope he has evolved and matured as an author to the point where if he puts out sci-fi, it can be great. And I'm definitely going to review whatever Christopher Paolini puts out. Subscribe if you would like to see those reviews in the future. I'm professional. Professional here. Now, for this next story, we don't know a whole lot, but Phil Lord and Chris Miller are teaming up with author Andy Weir. Andy Weir, for those of you who don't know, is the author of such stories as The Martian and Artemis, both fairly well received. The Martian definitely being one of the best known sci-fi stories of the last few decades, and already had a great live-action adaptation of it. Matt Damon really shined in that role. So I'm excited to see that he'll be involved with another project, but we don't really know anything about it. Too bad. And in a last-minute fantasy news quickie, Warhammer: The Old World is being revamped for the fantasy community here. It looks like Warhammer fans are in for a treat of a new edition of one of their favorite games. I'm not super heavily involved with the Warhammer community, so I didn't really know what everything meant here, but I love tabletop gaming. I think this falls into that. I guess it does, and I'm excited for you guys. Let me know down below if I screwed up the coverage of this, because I did my best. Now, transitioning into the superhero news, we got this post for the upcoming Runaways series over at Hulu. The stakes have never been higher. Marvel Runaways returns December 13th on Hulu. The only thing I have to say to that is, where's my New Mutants? And in superhero news, I'm very excited for Andy Serkis has been confirmed for Alfred Pennyworth in the upcoming The Batman adaptation starring Robert Pattinson. Of all the roles I called for Andy Serkis, Alfred Pennyworth was not one of them, but I'm not against it. Basically, I'm not against him being in anything, in any role. I love Andy Serkis so much. Please be in everything. The Russo brothers are producing a Marvel vs. DC comic book docuseries. I doubt many people will be completely believing that they're not a little bit biased with this docuseries, but I'm incredibly interested to get their perspective on this nearly centuries-old rivalry. Very cool. The Rock seems to be finally hyping up his role as Black Adam in the upcoming DC Black Adam movie with this post on Instagram, where I don't have the time to read it all, but he goes in depth to his history with the character, his love of superheroes and comics. We see a lot of this from stars who get involved with comic book movies, where they talk about their inner nerd that's been there the whole time, and now Rock is joining the ranks, and I really think he's well cast for Black Adam in general. I'd love to see him in that role, but I just don't know him versus the guy who plays Shazam, if I could believe the guy who played Shazam is ever a threat for The Rock. Granted, he was jacked in Shazam, don't get me wrong, but The Rock is like what I go to before I work out on Instagram, because like, oh my God, I like do pull-ups and I feel impressive. Then I see him like weighting himself down. How are you so in shape? And in superhero quickie news, The Joker has officially become the first R-rated movie ever to cross $1 billion at the box office. There's a lot that can be said of what this is going to be doing for movies in general. It proves superhero R-rated movies are viable like no one thought before, and maybe we could see a doubling down in the R-rated category for superheroes or supervillains. I'm not sure, but hey, let's go for it. I just wish this had happened before we got a Venom adaptation, so they could have gone all-out R-rated Venom. Jeff Goldblum reportedly inadvertently confirmed that Robert Downey Jr. will return to voice Iron Man in the animated upcoming What If series, though I don't know if I want to take this as absolute truth. Jeff Goldblum's kind of a strange feller. I love him, don't get me wrong, he's amazing, but he could just say something that's not true. I don't know. I love Jeff Goldblum. I don't mean any offense by this. He's fantastic. He also just seems to talk sometimes. And in the final bit of fantasy news we're going to talk about here today, it's completely not fantasy related and entirely me related. Yesterday, I released a video about how not to take criticism, going over the recent debacle around one author who responded rather harshly to some criticism she received. And while I stand by everything I said in that video, I do want to put out and note, if people didn't see in the pinned comment, she did publicly apologize, citing many of the reasons I did talk about in the video. I'm not saying she saw it, she probably didn't, but it's just the reasons that were pretty obvious. But I just want to mark that. Good on her for apologizing. Thank you. This has been your latest episode of Fantasy News. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support me and what I do here. And join the Discord server and send me some news articles if you would like to see certain fantasy news things covered. Have a good one, y'all. Peace!